Is that a real question that you would ask somebody? When's the last time you asked me a question? Is that a way to sort of invite some empathy, or is that just a reflection?
I would be careful not to make it feel like cornering, like, "Hey, when's the last time you asked me a question, butthole?" It would probably the way that I would form that a phrase, I'd be like, "Hey, I'd love for you to ask me a question about me that's on your mind."
What I hear you saying is, like, whatever room you're in, bring a good question, and always be kind of trying to find a better question.
And the inverse of that is also interestingly very true. You need small rooms to ask big questions. If you want resolution, you need a smaller room where people are for you and with you, and they're holding the weight of that thing and going, "We will take this thing seriously." Because a lot of times we throw great questions out in the wrong spaces.
Yeah.
The most important question is the next one.
Do you know how John Lennon met Yoko Ono?
As a former professional musician, I'm ashamed to say I have no idea how John and Yoko met.
So I might not be getting all the details right, but she
Well,
was.
then I don't want to hear it. It's not accurate to the.
It's probably pretty accurate. My wife makes fun of me about this. She's like, I'll hear something once and remember it exactly.
My wife makes fun of me for the opposite. I'll hear something once and then embellish it indefinitely.
Yeah. Which is, the better of the two. Yoko was a pretty avant-garde artist. John Lennon is sort of sick of being a Beatle. He never really wanted to be famous. He went to art school. He wanted to be an artist. And so when he got sort of pigeonholed as like this doo-woppy, head-shaking mop head, he hated it, and he spent the first half of his career with the Beatles, which was less than a decade, kind of building up this worldwide international fame, and then the second half basically trying to tear it down. And you could see it in their music. I mean, you can see him getting weirder and weirder and weirder. Like he and Yoko when they started making music together, they have like 12-minute songs of them just screaming. It's pretty avant-garde. Anyway, but he met her at an art exhibit of hers in New York City, and the exhibit is you climb a ladder, and you open a little trapdoor in the ceiling, and you have to like get a little magnifying glass, and there's a tiny little word, and you use the magnifying glass to see what the word is, and the word says yes, and that's the whole exhibit. That's how they met.
That's fascinating. And for you, why do you think that was such a catalyst for them?
Because I think he felt pigeonholed as an artist, and the job of an artist is to always continue to expand horizons. This is what an artist does. Is society says this is the line between true and false, between real and not real, and the artist always wants to embellish that line a little bit. And this is what questions do. And so what I like about that is whatever most people are asking a question that they are afraid to voice. And I remember reading a poem by David White a while back, which was he has a conversation with his dead mother in this poem, where his mom comes to him in a dream or something. But basically, it's a way for him to kind of like tie up the loose ends of, losing his mother. And basically she says to him something like, everything you ever believed was true. And I think there's something about that, especially as we get older, that yes, there is a version of us who gets sort of beat up, disillusioned, frustrated with the world. The inner child goes, man, life is hard. But there's another version of us who's waiting for it to come back around again.
The version that's saying yes.
That says yes. Whatever the question is, the answer is yes. Because most of life tells you no. Your parents tell you no. Your boss tells you no. The authorities tell you no. One of the lessons that I want to teach my kids is that most things are negotiable. Even this is negotiable. Now, there's always a cost to negotiation.
Yeah.
You might have to give something up to get what you want. But most of the experiences in my life where somebody said, this is the line, that wasn't like a law of the universe.
Yes.
It was just an indication of their experience up to that point in their life. And they're like, this is the way the world works. And this happens in organizations, this happens in neighborhoods, this happens in nations, and it certainly happens in the world where you're dealing with other people and somebody says, this is the way it is.
Yeah. Whether it's the HOA or the UN.
Yeah, like it's never the way it is. It's the way we've agreed that it needs to be right now. But that is always shifting. And if it's shifting too much, you have chaos. But if it's shifting too little, you've got stasis, you've got stagnancy, you've got the opposite of evolution.
And I think it's interesting that as you were talking about us getting older, today for me, and I only know this because my brother has a memory and a brain like yours, and he thinks about things like this. Today, as we record this conversation, I am the exact age my dad was when he died, to the day. Today. And this was brought to my attention by my brother on a Marco Polo. Like, I had no idea. And so it's me and my two brothers and two of our friends are on this Marco Polo group. And he was like, I've been thinking about this because it's also his son's 9th birthday today.
This is your brother's son's 9th birthday?
Yeah, so my nephew.
So your nephew was born the day that your dad died. Not the day, but like the date, like the date.
Right, yeah. The days that he was, I guess, alive. Anyway, the math escapes me because I'm not a detailed person like you and Jerome are. But the idea here is tomorrow I will have lived one more day than my dad did in his life. Jerome, had done the math on the months and the years and the days. And again, it was because conversations that I've had with these 5 guys and with my wife and with, people that I trust and respect like you, that I come to this place still asking, where's the yes? Not being afraid of the no. And I think that is the byproduct of great questions. It's the byproduct of remaining curious after 43 and a half years of life, where I'm in positions, and there might be incredible privilege involved that, and I recognize that. But I think, like Spider-Man, Peter Parker would say, with great power comes great responsibility. So if I've been given this power and privilege to be able to ask and receive good questions from other people, my role in the world is now to give that to other people, to make sure that when you maybe outlive the days that your parents had, that they're full of more yeses than nos. They're full of more curiosity than, a jaded assumption that I already have all the answers.
I like the idea that conflict resolution, which is what we're talking about today, is really a matter of trying to find the yes. I've done in various seasons of life. I was at my very, very first real job as an adult was working in a call center.
Oh.
And it's funny how these like early jobs affect you. And that job affected me in 2 ways. One, driving 30 minutes to go work in a call center for 8 hours a day for 7 months straight. I decided I will never do that. I will not end up back there. That is not the ideal scenario for me.
Yeah.
And 2, I did learn how to sell. I learned how to make 100 calls a day, get 20 connects, 5 sales. And what's funny is I like to think that most things aren't a numbers game, and that job taught me the opposite. It's like, no, this just is what it is. It basically evens out. If you have amazing conversations with people, 20-minute conversation, like, oh, this is a great conversation, I'll have to think about it.
Right.
It didn't convert any better. It was just like, get the calls in, make it happen. But the other thing I learned was really what it means to sell, and what it means to sell is everybody has a yes, a little trapdoor yes that they need.
Yep.
And what you need to do to find the yes is to ask the right question.
Yeah. And I think the beauty of framing curiosity around this topic of conflict is going, let's elevate it, right? Instead of asking like, hey, how do we do conflict better? It's going, well, let's even elevate our thinking around conflict. Because you said something really interesting in even the Yoko story, is like you grab the magnifying glass and you look and it says yes. My premise around this idea of conflict is actually you're not looking for a yes, you're looking for two yeses. Because in every conversation, there will always be conflict, there's always tension, there's always like a scarcity moment of like, well, are you getting enough time or am I getting enough time? And in any relationship, if there's one winner, there are two losers. Because if I win and I walk away, well, then we lost relationship. And so what we're now looking for is two yeses. And the beauty of this question is really going, well, how can we get on the same page? That requires me to move and you to move. It requires two yeses to move from being in opposition to each other to being shoulder to shoulder, staring in the same direction at something.
Hey, I should say that note for the team that they're a so adequate bathroom.
Oh, yeah, we had brought that in. I can move it back for you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had brought that in before
Before our conversation.
Today are
Hey, man, I'll just pack up.
that sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I have to ask you.
No, that's fine. I was canceled.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
You were feeling it.
Hmm.
You were feeling it. Y'all are making it.
Yeah, hard. So actually, what I think is better is let's just head straight to my house.
And start.
As we can still salvage today. We won't need to do nearly as much of this. So, yeah. Cool. All right. So,
See, it's fun.
it is fun.
So it's fun because everything belongs, and I think creativity is about letting everything belong and bringing it in and alchemizing it.
Yeah.
And this is what I think doesn't happen in good conversations is there are taboos. There are things that are, there are topics that are off limits. And because I don't think people realize like a conversation is like a GPS. If you start going the wrong way, you can turn around.
Yeah.
You go, hey, do you want to talk about this? I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable. Okay, that's cool. But people don't do that because they're trying to get to an outcome. And conversation is not outcome based. It's connection based, right?
Yep.
So this episode is about conflict. We are getting kicked out of the place that we rented to do this. We're in the process of getting kicked out. It's like the Beatles, playing that rooftop concert, and then at the end of Let It Be, the police are coming to kick them off.
Because we expect this conversation to be the level of, a Beatles record. We need that level of artistry. But I think it's important to note, kind of while we're in the midst of this thing, wrapping it up and, starting to wrap cables and get out of here, is my desire is for the gentleman who just said, hey, we're making this really hard for them. I don't want this to be hard for anybody. I want a win-win. And so now in the container, unfortunately, somebody else who's probably outside of his purview has decided this is no longer a win for us. This is actually disruptive. And so in that moment, we can pivot. We can find a different space. We can do a different thing. Because in this moment, if I were to be like, I'm going to cancel my membership and I'm never going to be here and you're going to get a 1-star review, all I've done in that moment is I might feel vindicated and get a win, but I've lost any connection with this other human. And the whole point of this thing, it's a journey where we as humans are trying to connect in these conversations and these dialogues. And if we can stop looking for my win or your win and continue to go, even as painful and difficult as it will be now to have a 4-hour interruption and find a new location, if that is at the expense of maintaining any sort of relationship with another human, I think it's a question worth asking. How do I help continuing to adjust to make sure there's a win-win? And then sometimes, as it might be in this moment, the win-win is going, oh, well, we will just get to work separately from each other. And that's what it is.
So the question is, how do we get on the same page?
Right. And I think for us right now in this moment, getting on the same page is being in a different location from each other. So this lovely establishment will continue to operate. We will continue to operate, and we'll both continue to do good things in the world. It just unfortunately won't be together because it just didn't make sense for both parties to do that.
And so sometimes being on the same page means you're being in separate places. You're not, when both sides are not necessarily willing to give up something essential, you've just got to part ways and go. That is being on the same page in the sense that you continue to get what you want, you get your win, I get my win, and we kind of go in our parallel journeys.
Yeah, because the 3 critical parts of doing this well are the 3 A's of a great conversation. And it doesn't mean the 3 A's of getting your way, which is different, right? The 3 A's of a great conversation are: 1, we acknowledge their difficulty. I've done something that apparently I shouldn't have done inside the ecosystem of this space. Okay, I'm so sorry. I had 2 conversations now with this gentleman to say, I did not mean to make your life harder, and I'm acknowledging that I have. I'm deeply sorry. The second thing, you affirm their effort. Hey, I really appreciate you sending an email or talking to me or bringing it to my attention. I'm affirming you are trying to make this work. And then the third thing, you ask what's their win, which I just did. I said, hey, would it make it better for you if we just packed up? Because it's making your day, as he said, you're making it really hard for me. Hey, man, I want to acknowledge that. Terribly sorry. I wish we could sort this out. And then all of a sudden, you can leave at least having acknowledged and affirmed and asking. So there's an incredible amount of clarity, because conflict is typically built on a lack of clarity. It's ambiguous, and so it creates anxiety. Whereas in this moment, he is very clear on what I tried to do and how I tried to fix it. I'm very clear on what he tried to do, but those wins could no longer operate in the same space. And so now we just go, we tried. Again, I acknowledge, very sorry, thank you for trying, and we'll just win in different spaces.
Yep.
So, all right. So we'll see you in a second in our new location. Well, we're in my house now, because that was weird, right?
Pretty weird. So speaking of conflict,
Yeah.
you're just kicked out of. I wasn't kicked out. You were.
Sure, yeah, it's just me. This is me. Not the crew, not the teleno's, just Carl.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. So the question is, how do we get on the same page? Can we get on the same page? I just saw you try to dismantle a conflict, and that resulted in us moving locations.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just break that down for me. Like what happened? Like you were obviously trying to find some common ground with the powers that be, and they didn't want us there.
Yeah. It reminds me of this famous phrase, as much as it is possible with you, live in peace with all people.
Right.
And in that moment, there was no more peace to be had in a kind of a shared space, right? And so I tried to run the 3 A's. Hey, I'm going to acknowledge this thing is difficult for you. I'm going to affirm, like, hey, you're great. Love the space. Thank you. And then I'm going to ask, hey, what's the win? And in the end, the win was us not being there. And that created less tension and more of a win. Now we're in my house. Feels really comfortable. All of us feel a little bit more comfortable because we don't know, hey, are we laughing too loud? Are we having too much fun? Okay, let's just have some home field advantage. And I think in this space, it's just really important to remember, like, what you're trying to win, you're trying to find those 2 wins, right? It's never going, oh, I won because I stayed, or they won because we left. It's going, no, in this place, there's a way to find a win for everybody involved.
That felt like within reason. That was a win for you to leave on, with some common ground.
Yeah, because I don't want to burn the relationship to the ground. And so in that moment, if I leave kicking and screaming and I win because I'm vindicated because they were wrong and to the letter of the law, they're not allowed to do this according to me, well, then I win. And then they can come back with an email and be like, no, we can do whatever we want to. And then they win. Well, in both those situations, you have 1 winner and 2 losers.
So we left, went out to lunch. At the end of lunch, you got an email that canceled your membership at this co-working space. And does that still feel like a win? I mean,
No,
it doesn't feel great.
No, I think in this moment, again, the idea of conflict in the tool is this circle.
Okay.
And this actually stemmed from an argument that my wife and I had almost 20 years ago. We're 16 years ago as newlyweds. And we were on the opposite sides of this table. And we're having an argument, and it's so long ago, I have no idea what it was about. But what I do remember is I'm a large human, and my wife is a petite lady. And in the middle of the argument, she stretches both arms out super wide and goes, "I'm not afraid of you, bear." And the image was so funny to me.
Wow.
I literally collapsed on my side of the table laughing at this little person. I mean, she's not a little person, 5'1", but I mean, to me, it was very funny to watch her go, "I'm not afraid of you, bear." And she comes around to my side of the table, and I come around to her, so we meet kind of in the middle, and we're just laughing and laughing and laughing. So it went from this really tense moment where it's like, oh, you're newlyweds, this could go poorly, like, this isn't a guarantee, to, oh my gosh, we're laughing. And as I collect myself, I'm like, what inspired that? And she said, as you were ramping up and I was ramping up, I was reminded of a friend of mine who I think they were a camp guide out west. And apparently bears are a real problem out on the trails. And what these camp counselors are taught is like, if you see one on the trails, get as big and loud as you can and chase the bear off. And she said, you're kind of like a bear. I was like, I'm not like a bear. She said, well, you get like, angry when you're hot, tired, or hungry. I was like, oh, I guess I sound just like a bear. And so in the moment, she's like, all I can think to do is break the tension, but I'm not afraid of you, bear. And what happened in that moment is there was an actual 2 wins. Because as the tension was broken and she moved with levity to my side and I moved with asking for forgiveness for ramping up to her side, all of a sudden we found this common ground that wasn't on her side of the table or on mine. It was on now this third space where all of a sudden I could go, hey, I escalated that way too quickly. And she'd go, own whatever she needed to own from the conversation. But it was this mutual desire to say, we need to find a new narrative. We need to find in that moment, it was my question of where did that come from? And unpacking that story and going, oh, I need to be more careful in these situations because, even physiologically, I'm at that point 6'2", 280 pounds. I'm a large person taking up a lot of space. And this is somebody else going, I don't love that. So let me share my vulnerability with you.
Do you think that was happening today?
No, I don't. So the way that I would say this is different in that moment is, I think sometimes when a company, and I see this a lot, right? I see when a company starts to get really big, they have to just, hey, this is our policy as we become more corporate. We're trying to have 200 stores as opposed to 10. They go, we have to live by a procedure. And I'm somebody who goes into companies and helps them create more clarity around their procedures. But in that moment, they sacrificed relationship for policy.
Right.
And that person having the conversation could be like, hey, let's have a quick 15 minutes. Let's really get to the bottom of this. Let's see if Carl, me, the offending party in this moment is willing to acquiesce or move or, say mea culpa. And for them, it's like, it's not worth the time or the relational capital. We'll just cut ties and kind of be done because that's cleaner and more efficient for us. And the problem with that inside a culture is then you feel the culture of transactional as opposed to relational. Even to something like, take a Starbucks, for instance. In the early 2000s, this was a thing to do. Like you went to the place, you got like a higher form of service and it felt curated.
On it,
your name is like really special. And as they expanded, and they even talked about this, we grew so quickly that we were losing the relational connection. And so you even watch Starbucks now in the last couple of years trying to not shrink back in size, but shrink back in intentionality and how they handle the tension of that. Because that's all conflict is. There's always tension. How are you being intentional with the tension? And in this moment, to finally answer your question, I think they just lacked intentionality on the other part of the partnership that I was trying to communicate with.
Yeah. It reminds me of a book that I worked on with a client years ago about sales, and he would teach sales reps how to close more. And he taught them sort of the opposite of what everybody was taught, which is most salespeople are like, go and kill, go get the sale, do whatever you got to do, push. And he had a policy of drop the rope.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's always a tug of war with you and the prospective client where you're trying to win, you're trying to beat them, but nobody wants to feel beaten, and then they're parting with their money. They want to feel like they win. And so he said, you got to drop the rope and take the trip. And it's about creating receptivity where you become more receptive to other people's ideas. And then when you become more receptive to them, they become more receptive to you.
Yeah.
Not always, but often. And so I love just that word picture of, crossing going on to the other side of the table, taking the trip. He drew this picture of like North Pole, South Pole. I'm up here, you're down here. And that is what the world looks like. Right, left, good, bad. This side versus that side. You've got one view, they've got another. You're both looking at the world, but from different perspectives. And all it takes is one person to kind of go to the other side of the table and go, oh, this is what it looks like. Yeah, that does make sense. I'm a foot taller than you. It makes sense that, I would be intimidating to you, even if I don't think I'm being intimidating.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, whether it's the globe or the table, that's where the intentionality in this idea for this question comes from, being attached to a circle. You're on one side of the circle, I'm on the other side of the circle. How do we find a way to be on the same side, shoulder to shoulder? Because again, in most things, people aren't the problem. The process is the problem. Something broke down in our communication. Like even today, I was the curious party and the other party was not. They weren't curious about, hey, when you wanted to shoot here, what did you think would happen? Or, hey, what do you need to adjust in this moment? So the death of that curiosity meant the kind of severing and ending of a relationship, even to an email of going, hey, we've canceled your membership, which feels like overkill. But in that moment, it's going, they were not interested in asking a question. They were interested in a very quick final statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a question invites more relationship,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to end it, you just make a statement.
Make a statement.
Yeah. Even one that was copied and pasted from elsewhere, potentially. What do you do when you're managing conflict, when you're dealing with another party and you think, I don't know, this person is toxic, they're a narcissist, they cannot be reasoned with, I cannot give in to them. Like, does that change things?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of genuine curiosity is entered into in good faith. And so, yeah, there's a rule if the other person is dangerous to you, a toxic, narcissistic person is not safe. The side that you will find with them is not one in which there is a win-win. They're always looking to singularly win. This is where we get this idea of zero-sum thinking, right?
Right.
It's like they're thinking the only way they win is if I lose. I have to lose for them to win.
Right. Uh-huh.
And so when you recognize that, when there's a complete lack of empathy and curiosity, I would say you need to start looking for other spaces. And luckily, that didn't happen today. I didn't feel like somebody was completely lacking in empathy
Sure.
or, at the end, they lacked some curiosity. But they genuinely, for most people, want them to be served well. But we have, we've all been in situations, whether it's work relationships or personal ones, which all relationships are personal, but ones outside of the workplace where you're like, oh, I can't remember the last time, and this is probably the most heartbreaking thing to me when I realized this in forming new relationships. I can't remember the last time you asked me a question.
Sorry. Trying. What do you mean? Who are you talking about?
Sorry. No, I mean, but it is the formation of almost all of my best friendships there is this continual give and take. And it's never a perfect balance. You're never asking the
Sure,
same
yeah,
depth
right,
or
right.
number of questions, but there's a genuine sense that on the other side of me is a person who's going, I wonder what it's like to live in your space or what you're experiencing. And you're right, when you find a truly narcissistic person and a truly toxic person, they don't have the ability in that moment. I think curiosity is a muscle. I think everybody could develop it, but they don't have the emotional wherewithal or desire to learn about you. That's a place where you need to start planning the process of your exit into a different space. So the first part in a working relationship typically comes with some sort of mediation. Be like, hey, I need another manager or I need another colleague. Are you seeing what I'm seeing or am I missing this? Are they truly curious? But we've got so much emotional baggage between us, I can't see it because I'm just mad at them before we even start the conversation. Oh, that's a weird mirror. I'm the one who's not being curious and I'm forcing that on them. But typically, if you get real levels of narcissism and real sense of a lack of curiosity, your gut's probably right. And it's a good place to start going, hey, when's the last time you asked me a question? And if you can't even do that, then you need other people to help you.
Is that a real question that you would ask somebody? When's the last time you asked me a question? Is that a way to sort of invite some empathy, or is that just a reflection?
Yeah, I would be careful not to make it feel like cornering, like, hey, when's the last time you asked me a question, butthole? It would probably, the way that I would form that a phrase, I'd be like, hey, I'd love for you to ask me a question about me that's on your mind.
I can't remember the last time I heard butthole in a conversation. I think it was 97,
I just went to a Weezer concert, so I'm still in that frame of mind, so I'm like, oh, butthole's a good one.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a really, what I hear you saying is like, whatever room you're in, like bring a good question, and always be kind of trying to find a better question. I think of, we've talked about this before, you and I, like big rooms, small rooms. My wife and I, this is all of her credit. But we came up this saying, she said it to me one time when I was about to make a decision that was not in our best interest, in the best interest of our family. And she said, we don't make big decisions in small rooms. I was in this small room. There were lawyers present. It was a serious decision. If you've ever been in any legal mediation, they put it's like interrogation. They put you in a room and they try to just beat you down. You're in there all day long, and eventually you give into some bad deal. That's what mediation is. And I was in this room, and I had to get up, go for a walk, get out of the room, because you get kind of cornered in these small spaces and you start thinking more small. And I think whatever size room you're in, a question sort of expands the space. So if you're in a space where where somebody's not inviting your question, you should always bring questions into those rooms, is what I'm hearing. But if there's just no curiosity, if your curiosity is not being met with other curiosity, you might need to go find a new room.
100%. And the inverse of that is also interestingly very true. You need small rooms to ask big questions, because in conflict, what you'll see, people who haven't yet developed a great sense of their own emotional intelligence will throw out big questions in big rooms, just hoping for a reaction, hoping somebody to take them seriously. But you typically need a smaller room where people are going, oh, this is serious, this is of value, and there's 3 or 4 people in the room going, hey, there's some conflict here. Because, you might have been in a meeting once with 20 employees or 100, and somebody will throw out something that they know is fractious in a big room. That's only inspiring more conflict. If you want resolution, you need a smaller room where people are for you and with you, and they're holding the weight of that thing and going, we will take this thing seriously. Because a lot of times we throw great questions out in the wrong spaces.
Yeah.
And so it's important that I don't think you make the decisions in small rooms. I think you need those big spaces to think. But I think the inverse is true, is that sometimes you need small spaces for big questions. Because we know this, right? The best questions or conversations you probably ever had are with your spouse, just one-on-one. That's a small container.
Space. It's in bed. It's on a date. It's in a living room of a friend kind of thing.
What's that Mayer line? I just want to lie here as the mattress spins on its axis. The whole world is just contained in this little rectangle. I just want to be here with you and let everything else spin around it.
That's because her body was a wonderland.
That's right. Or in my case, my buddy and I wrote the song "Your Body Is Not a Wonderland" that will never get released because it is awful.
But probably pretty good. In its own
a good way. In its own Weird Al Yankovic sort of way. We were going to try and sell it to him, but the moment has passed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the question to ask yourself, and maybe to invite somebody else into, when you feel the room getting sort of smaller around you, the conflict building, is, when was the last time you asked me a question? Or when was the last time I asked you a question? I love that, thinking about my relationship with my wife. It's are we in kind of a crunchy moment? And when was the last time I asked her a serious question about herself? When did I try to invite some unknown by me piece of her kind of out? Let me see something from you that's maybe a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah. And I love your word invitation, because the way I'd phrase the question for myself is, when's the last time I've asked a great question about her? The question I would pose to my wife is, hey, would you mind asking me a new question about me?
Right.
Because when sometimes can feel, like an interrogation, hey, you're now under scrutiny, as opposed to, hey, what I need in this moment, or even what I would love or want from you, is, would you mind asking me a new question about me? And then there becomes that invitation as opposed to an interrogation.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the challenges with the lionizing of question asking, period. If you're asking good questions, you're good. I've been in networking business contacts where somebody's like, so where are you from? What do you do? It's just they're they're asking so many questions that you don't get to ask them questions. I don't know if you've ever been to lunch with somebody like that, where it's I don't know, they're scraping all of the marrow out of you. It's it's not a conversation. It's not an invitation to connection. It's just I'm trying to extract information out of you to a point that the exchange is inequitable. I actually feel at the end of a conversation like that, like I owe the person something. Like I've been in, meetings, connections where I felt like they were just pummeling me with questions, and I felt like demeaned and diminished, mostly because I didn't come with my A game. I felt shame, like, oh, I should have like been more prepared or something. And I've had friends, say to me, "You didn't really come with any questions. What was up with that?" I was like, I thought we were just hanging out. It'd be like you being like, we're 15 minutes in this, you haven't asked me any questions. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I love the vulnerability of like, hey, I'm feeling like this is a little bit one-sided, and I just wonder if you could ask me a question about myself.
So I love this, mostly because I think there's one last great idea around conflict that we haven't unpacked yet, and that's silence when not weaponized is so helpful. A lot of times you'll hear in these sales techniques, like just ask them a question and like don't break eye contact or use it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well that's you weaponized silence.
Right.
But I think if you ask a question that's more interesting, a bigger question than, hey, where are you from? And then not listen to the answer, your silence is a gift to the other person that says, I give you all of this space. Write whatever story, paint whatever picture, it's all yours. And I'm reminded, and I don't know who said it, and you probably do, is silence is the first language of God, and everything since has been a poor translation. And it's such a gift to say, hey man, I would just love to know, in the last 4 weeks, what's bringing you life? What's really interesting to you? What have you discovered about yourself in the last year that you're like, I'm so glad I found that out about myself? That's such a big question that if I immediately went to, hey, and do you prefer peanut butter or jelly? Like, I didn't give any silence. I didn't give any space. I didn't actually respect you enough or care about you enough to give you time. And so the two things that are needed in any sort of conflict is, am I willing to ask a better, bigger question that might get messy? And two, am I willing to give you the silence and space requisite to answer a question that big, to go on that journey together? And the path towards moving from conflict to connection is being willing to do both of those things.
What I like about what you do, which I do think it is a muscle. I think you have flexed your curiosity muscle a bit in many years. You did that to me a while back, and I was feeling kind of like, and you're like, what's bringing you life right now? And I was like, this is a stupid throwaway question, idiot, curious coach, screw this, guys. And I was like, grumpy. I was like, people will go, hey, Jeff, what do you need? That's a question we're going to ask in a little bit. What do you need? I was like, money. What do you mean, what do I need? It's like, don't give me this nonsense trying to help. Send me money. You want to help me? Send me money.
Yeah. $500,000 a year probably gets me a new answer.
$1, $20, $50. Show me you care.
So just put Jeff's Venmo. Link right here.
I'm one of those cars with the Venmo thing on the back. Venmo me. I don't know why. Just do it.
You have cash. Give it to me.
Yes. How can I help? That's how you can help. What do I need? Money. You said, what's bringing you joy or something like that. And I think I said something like, I don't know, listening to like vinyl records, it was like a 2-word answer. And I think something you do really well is the follow-up question. And I think the silence is good. It invites, some openness. And then the follow-up question, the next question that you ask, because you can only ask one great question at a time, and you don't have to start with a great question. Start with the best question that you can, and then keep asking better questions. But I think a conversation the quality of a conversation is dictated in part by how well you can keep asking good questions, right? I mean, that's a date, that's relationship, that's a sales or marketing process. It's the ability to stay in touch and in contact with the person that keeps it going, right? We just walked away from a conflict where, like, frankly, I think you were giving, the other side wasn't really. And you can only take a conversation so far when the other party isn't willing to converse and connect. But I said, vinyl records, and you were like, oh, cool, that's interesting. What is it about, listening to vinyl that is lighting you up? Is it the experience? Is it the sound? Is it all of it? And I think in that moment, I was like, this is not a BS, hey, how are you text. That's not like, that's going to get like a cool or awesome, bro. Like, check out this thing I just posted. Get
Yeah.
your support or whatever.
Right, yeah.
You know, like those kinds of like, hey, man, how you doing?
Really, this is what I need from you.
This is what I need from you. Or what I really need is for you to say, hey, how are you doing? And I'm going to unload all my trauma on you. I think the kids call it a trauma dump. Seriously. It was just trauma dump. They were baiting me for a trauma dump. They just wanted to go, here's everything wrong.
So would
with my
that
life.
be the laxative that prompts the trauma dump?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That is the lack of the
yeah.
So I think the follow-up question, the next question, following the silence or whatever, I think is an important part of the process. It's not just come up with one great question. It's ask one great question at a time, and the conversation can only go so far as you are willing to keep asking questions.
Yeah. And that makes me think of, Warren Buffett's line when a reporter once asked him, "Hey, Warren, how much money is enough money?" And Warren, arguably one of the richest people on the planet, goes, "Just a little bit more." And as weird, gross, great, whatever your status on your feeling on that is, it highlights this idea around curiosity, which is how much curiosity is enough? Just a little bit more. Because, my thought around this is the most important question is the next one. Because we've connected, and how do we connect more deeply? You give space, then you ask another question. They ask a question, give space. So it's this beautiful cyclical thing that just keeps on getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And in a moment like today, the circle is interrupted. Okay, I'll go create that connection with somebody else. But I think it's also important as we think about conflict, I'm not making assumptions or judgments about these people and going, oh, you were out to get me. You were a person with a moment of scarcity who made a choice that I wouldn't have made. And I'm not going to carry the weight of judgment towards you or anger or resentment because I can go be connected to somebody else now. And hopefully you will connect better with somebody else than me. And that's how we move from conflict, even when we're no longer connected.
So, until the next question.
Until the next question.